They didn't just torture, they indoctrinated. The Knights Templar are often remembered as warrior monks, crusaders shrouded in myth and divine purpose. But behind the legends, buried in stone chambers and ancient confessions, lies something darker, something more calculated. They didn't merely break bones, they dismantled identities. They didn't seek truth, they engineered obedience. And the tools they used didn't vanish with the fall of the order. They evolved, adapted, and some of them now live again, rebranded, digitized, sanitized, under modern names. It begins in the silence of the cell, not the scream, not the whip, but the silence. A silence so deep it feels unnatural. You hear your own blood. You start to doubt your own breath. This is not a punishment. This is a prelude. The Templars understood what most regimes took centuries to grasp, that fear is most effective when it is faceless, when it has no name, no form, only presence, a whisper you can't locate, a shadow that doesn't move. In that void, the prisoner begins to create their own torturer. The imagination becomes a weapon against the self. Now the room begins to shift, not physically but psychologically. It shrinks, though the walls never move. The air thickens, time slows. You start to forget when you last blinked, when you last slept. You become unsure if you're awake. This is calculated. The body's deprivation triggers the mind's collapse. The first lesson of medieval control: perception is more fragile than pain. Then comes the Strappado, a rope around the wrists, arms pulled behind the back. You're hoisted into the air, suspended just long enough to feel the shoulder begin to dislocate. Not enough to kill, just enough to make you wish it would. And when they lower you, it isn't to give you mercy. It's to remind you it can happen again. Pain, repeated with precision, becomes education. Your body begins to associate resistance with rupture, and resistance begins to die. But the most dangerous wounds aren't on the body, they're in the psyche. The Templars knew this. When they interrogated, they didn't shout. They whispered. They asked questions with answers already written. They planted ideas like seeds and watched you water them with desperation. You confess not to end the pain, but because something in you starts to believe maybe you are guilty, maybe you deserve this. That's the second lesson. Guilt can be manufactured. If enough shame is placed on a person, strategically, ritually, they will carry it willingly. They will own their chains, even polish them. The rituals were precise, the chambers dimly lit. The use of iconography, crosses, relics, ancient texts, was never decorative. It was psychological. Every site reinforced a divine hierarchy. Every echo reminded the prisoner they were beneath something vast, something eternal. It wasn't just the Templars speaking. It was God through them. And that made resistance not just foolish, but blasphemous. Then came the silence again, the void between sessions, the empty time. Hours, days, maybe weeks, with no contact, no voice, no violence, just space and solitude. You begin to imagine things. You hear footsteps that never arrive, chains that never move. Your mind conjures the next torture, even when it doesn't come. That's the genius. Anticipation becomes its own agony. That's the third lesson. The unknown is often more effective than the known. Eventually, the prisoner breaks, not because they are weak, but because the structure is perfect. The confession flows, and it doesn't even matter if it's true. It only matters that it feels true, that it sounds sincere, that it serves the ritual. But here's where the darkness deepens. Because the confession isn't the end, it's the beginning of reformation. Once you confess, they begin to rebuild you. Not physically, mentally. They offer small kindnesses, water, warmth, a word of mercy. The same hand that harmed you now heals you. And your brain, desperate for stability, attaches to the only source of relief, your captors. This is the Stockholm Syndrome before Stockholm. This is the medieval blueprint for psychological dependency. By the end, the prisoner might leave the dungeon, but they don't leave whole. They leave aligned, not just silent, but grateful. That's the final trick. The perfect subject is not the one who obeys. It's the one who believes obedience is salvation. And if you think this is ancient history, you're wrong. Because these techniques never vanished. They adapted. In modern times, they wear new masks. Isolation? It's now digital. Filter bubbles, algorithmic echo chambers. Voices you disagree with are quietly removed. You're not tortured, you're cocooned. And slowly, the world shrinks to fit your biases. You're alone, but surrounded by illusion, just like the cell. Confession? It's now public apology. Not for redemption, but for display. The ritual remains. Accusation, silence, pressure, and then surrender. The crowd doesn't want truth. It wants compliance, repentance, a modern flagellation. The silence between torments? It's now called shadow banning, suppression, the slow creeping disappearance. You're not exiled, you're made invisible. And invisibility is a powerful punishment, because the mind fills in what the algorithm never says. Symbols? Still present. Brands, flags, hashtags, icons repeated until they gain the weight of religion, until seeing them triggers emotional allegiance or disgust. Rituals rebranded as trends, mass behavior shaped not by swords, but by screens. The modern mind believes it's free, that it's evolved beyond medieval superstition. But freedom isn't the absence of chains, it's the awareness of them. The Templars understood that. And so do the engineers of modern control. When you scroll through your feed, when you parrot a belief you haven't questioned, when you feel the cold flush of shame at saying the wrong thing, ask yourself, whose confession are you performing? Who taught you what to fear? Because the greatest trick of the Templar wasn't torture, it was persuasion through suffering. The idea that pain reveals truth, that discomfort is proof of guilt, that silence is safety. But pain is just noise. It doesn't speak unless we choose to listen. And today, the question isn't whether these methods still exist. It's whether you can recognize them when they appear with smiling faces, with progress slogans, with social justice painted over them like a flag on a blade. This is not a warning, it's a mirror. You've seen the past, you know what it looks like. Now ask yourself, where is it hiding in the present? If this disturbed you, good, it should. If it intrigued you, even better. Knowledge is the first weapon in a war for your perception. If you felt something shift inside you, subscribe, like, share this. Someone else needs to see it. And remember, freedom doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from awareness. And the battlefield is your mind.